Welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to finish off another one of our stamp sketches here. This one's going to be a quick finish because I'm going to be using a very large stamp in the form of the Milky Way Lg in both the sky and in the reflection down here. One of the cool things about doing water types of scenes is that you can utilize the bottom portion as a mirror for what's going on in the sky. So skies tend to be a very dramatic feature of a scene. I think it tends to set the tone and kind of the emotional, I don't know, feel or quality of a piece. And having a body of water, kind of gives you an extra excuse to have it in the landscape. So you get that mirrored type of, I don't know, kind of a visual. Okay, so this is Milky Way here. It's a lot of solid area on this, okay? There's a lot of stars in there, of course, too, but I'll show you the way that I like coloring this. Now, you could color it in just one uniform color and just stamp it out. I would recommend something from at least a medium to a darker value, just in general. If you stamp it out in something very light like this, kind of powder blue type of value, then the contrast between the stars within the design won't show up as much, you know, as a color with some darker contrast to what will be retained in the form of the white of the paper here. So what does that mean? Okay, so let me show you when we get into it. And what I was mentioning is that you can just do it in one color, but I think that this stamp looks a lot more certainly varied, but I think it's just a richer kind of end result if you do multiple tones in there, okay? Now, there's a couple different ways we can do it. We can just, this is kind of a medium tone blue. I could just stamp that out and tone over it a little bit with some pink here and there, or purple or something like that, or you can go with the aqua green type of color scheme by adding greens over the top of it. But I like to physically mix some of my colors with just another dye-based marker like this, okay? So you can kind of see in there that the blue and the pink pen here are physically mixing to form that violet tinge, okay? Now, that might give me a little bit of a hard type of blend. So what I like to do is I'll go back to another blue, okay? And what I'll do is I'll come back in here and just kind of blend that out a little bit, okay? Your pen has to be a little bit moist for this part of it. Not to do this in general, but if it's really dry, what you might be doing is absorbing a lot of that ink on there more than kind of blending it in. So, you know, whatever color you're ending up with as you're blending. If you do this technique right here, you don't have to blend like this. I mean, you could get harder edges and just kind of smooth it out later with some additional tone, but I like to get as much in the actual ink here as possible. I wonder if I went a little bit too kind of blended there. Let me get a little bit more of this pink on there. I mean, you can kind of control it to some extent, but then you know, in some ways you might not be able to control it. It just depends on how wet your inks are, your pads and your pens. And then if I was to do this again, which I will do, I'll probably get just a completely different color blend here. Okay, now these are dye-based inks, so I could just stamp it right over my black impressions, my stamp sketch impressions. And I don't have to worry about it. It's not as if my light blue, pink, and everything like that is going to look like it's in front of the black impressions, okay? Just the lightest colors always kind of recede into the distance more than the darker ones, okay? Just from a visual perspective. And dye-based inks are transparent, okay? They're not translucent, kind of like pigment inks, and will just always just kind of blend in. So you see all those colors like that. You know, see those black impressions are closer to us there. And you can see those blends that are happening in there. Now, I mean, you could just leave it like that, but I like to go in and I'll bring in an additional impression down here. Now I have my little figure down here, so if I stamp that really dark purple down here again, then I won't be able to see my figure down here as well. So that's the reason why I'm just going to try to go for a second impression here. Now I might have been waiting around too long here, but they say to huff on this, you breathe on it to bring extra moisture into it. Now one of the things I might do is I might go like this, and if I just go like this, I'll have that same kind of, motion down here, but if I want to go for a little bit of a slightly more of a mirrored impression, maybe I'll do this. Now I'm just going to stamp it right over those rocks because I'm going to color those rocks in a little bit more anyway. But let me see if I can get a second impression out of this. If I can't, and it's just way too light, then all we have to do is just ink it up again and just stamp another one over the top of it. Because you can do that without any kind of positioning, because sky figures like this and stars, it doesn't matter if you kind of register it, right on again or something like that. It's not going to matter. Okay, so see right there, we have those lighter tones kind of mirroring what's happening up there, right? And see, I do get some of that purple in here, okay? But I'm going to blend in a lot of those colors anyway, and I'm going to bring some of those colors in from the sky into my rocks, okay? Because if you're doing this right here, you're saying that there's kind of a purple and blue light being cast in the scene in general, okay? So, if that being said, if there's purple and blue light, then the rocks would be purple and blue, okay? I mean, you can make them a different color if you want to, but just in general, like if there was a white wall somewhere, a house or something like that that's white, and if it was during, a really brilliant, warm tone, yellow and, orange sunset, then that wall is going to be that color. So that's the same thing for this type of scenario like this. You get those colors being cast over the different objects within the space. Okay, now let me show you how fast this can come together here, okay? Well, let's start off with the light blue. I was just thinking, maybe we'll just go in straight with the darker tone, but okay, here's the thing. In this situation like this, with the Milky Way, my stars are the lightest, supposedly, if we looked at this scenario out in real life, if you were outdoors, kind of a moonlit night probably, where you can see the Milky Way very distinctly, your stars would be the lightest area in a scene, okay? We're saying that there's no cabin here, with windows or something, has a fire pit going on, what I mean, or something like that. I'm just saying out in nature, without any kind of artificial light or something like that. Stars are going to be the brightest thing. So in other words, when I start coloring in, where that comes into play, when I'm coloring in, I'm going to bring in some tone to, do some blending here. But I don't want to blend out all of my starlight in there. So you just kind of bring this in on the perimeter like this, and I'm going into my Milky Way, probably about an inch or so, from both sides. I mean, you can bring some of this lighter blue in here, but for the most part, leave those areas fairly light, and then they will end up being our light source in the scene, okay? So a lot of times, when people see a finished piece of work like this, and they see these little white, stars or something like that, and all the rest of the card is kind of dark, a lot of times the question is, oh, how did you get those kind of light stars in there? Did you bleach it or something like that? They tend to think that you got a lot of color down and then you did some sort of bleaching process or some sort of masked, kind of frisk, if you know what that is. It's this little masking fluid or something like that. They think that you added those lighter aspects, into the scene, as opposed to just, no, you didn't add them in, you just retained the white of the paper, when you did your toning, okay? All right? So it's all about retention rather than creation of those lighter areas. Now we're kind of creating light through, contrast here, but we're not doing anything additive here. Okay, so now see, I'm putting, my color on my rocks. I'll leave some of those rocks a little bit light, like they're capturing, reflecting some of that light up there. This would be the same technique if you had a moon up here and you want it to be nice and light, then don't tone it out, okay? All right, so adding in like so, okay? See, that kind of added a little bit of a perimeter tone around the entire thing, okay? Now this is going to move a lot faster now. Let's go on with a couple other blues, okay? See this right here? Come around the perimeter like this. Now, here's where people kind of eradicate their light. I'm talking about when they're first starting off doing lighting, you know. We're doing coloring, but a lot of people just aren't used to doing lighting at the same time. So if this is, they're thinking that this is a blue, like they're just coloring in the whole thing blue. I am adding blue in here, but I'm doing it more in a selective manner. Now, for me, I tend to leave, you know, my center areas a little bit lit like that. So it's just about adding your tone on the perimeter like that, okay? And then you get this kind of centralized light. Now here's the thing I'm doing here. These areas right here, or this whole area in the middle would be light, but you see what I'm doing? I'm separating light source, you know, the stars, from the reflected light on the surface of the water in this case. If it was a meadow or something like that down here, you know, I wouldn't, I might not have the purples reflecting down there, but I would still have that light down here. So an area that represents your light source is up top, and the reflected light is down below, and it's separated by an area of darkness in between, okay? So in other words, you don't just have light in there, you just put a little bit of area of dark down in the middle of it, and it becomes light source and reflected light. It's the easiest thing. It's like an 8 you can consider. And if you want to, you can do that same exact lighting kind of convention for, it works in, I don't know, you can do that for 98% of your scenes or something like that. Now sometimes I just have one big sky and it's the sun surrounded by clouds. Then in that case I just have one, I don't have a reflected light area. So it's just one big glowing area. Okay, this is a darker blue, and I'll just show you how fast this goes right here. Okay, see, I'm already done on this whole side right here. So the most amount of coverage you do is with your lightest tones. When you get into the darker tones, it tends to be a little bit more perimeter oriented, okay? Let's go like that. All right. Now, the darker you take the surrounding area, the lighter the areas are going to seem that haven't been colored. Okay, so if you want that, you know, kind of that areas like that to really stand out, then go all the way to black, okay? I'm just using the same paper towel. 4 corners, okay? So just go like that. Right here. Right here. If you take it one step lighter, darker, it looks one step lighter by contrast, okay? All right, I'm going in here. Now I'm kind of going into that area that kind of separates. I'm not going to go across the whole thing, though. I like to kind of anchor my rocks down a little bit, so I'm putting some tone, like at the base of the rocks, to represent a strong shadow. Like about like that. Okay. All right, see that nice separation right there? Let me go a little bit darker here. Sometimes you'll be adding tone by the time you get to the, 5th color or something like that. And there's so much ink on the perimeter. When you start adding it, it's like, I'm not even adding anything because it's so saturated with ink that it's really not taken to it. But as you, kind of let it sit and allow it to dry and absorb into the pulp of the paper. So it's drying by absorption and by evaporation. As it gets a little bit drier, it allows you to transfer more of whatever color you're on. Now, a lot of inks are very thick. I happen to be using Marv inks, which are some of the thinnest inks, so I'm not really having to wait for too long, but let's say you're in, I don't know, kind of a time of year that's not very arid and dry, and then you're using some of the thickest inks, like mementos are very thick. You might have to wait till it dries a little bit, or just hit it with a little bit of a heat setting. You know, don't dry it to, you know, bone dry or anything like that, but just take some of the moisture out and then go back to that addition there. But okay, so anyways, we have that there. You can see those bows up there against that night sky. You have your little character down below like that. Okay, now what I like to do is we've added a lot of this tone in here. We've lost a lot of the kind of the little sparkly stars out on the perimeter because that's where we've added a lot of the tone. We've gone into the Milky Way. So the Milky Way impression pretty much goes from edge to edge. And what I did was I came into probably about like right here, you know, on that side over there. And over here, so it's about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. In other words, you don't just tone right up to this rectangle here. You blend the tones into it, okay? But where we've layered and blended all those tones into this design, we've lost, you know, those little star textures out there, okay? But if you want to get those back, all we have to do is take a white gel pen, a white paint pen. Some people use correctional pens of something like that, okay? And you can just go back in here and add that little sparkle kind of back into those areas right here. You can use, you can add in some crystal rhinestones if you want to. That's really fun. Add it as a kind of a, you know, focal point star, something like that. It really gets the viewer's attention having something three-dimensional and sparkly. Okay. All right. Now here's one of the things that I like to do too. If we'd like to, now my rocks are fairly light in there. I didn't bring in too much tone. Well, here, let me bring in a little bit of tone. See, this isn't a detailed instrument right here, but here's a, you know, just a alcohol pen. I can go in on some of these rocks and color some of the base of the rocks, or the lower half darker, okay? And we can get into some detailed shading. Come around here in the water a little bit. Okay, so I've gone into my rocks a little bit more, all right? And then what you can do is you can kind of bring an extra highlight into it, which is different than just simply retaining some of the white in there. Let me show you. Here's that image right here. Okay, so you can see I have those highlights of the rocks inherently, but then when we start toning them in, sometimes we tone in, you know, the top of the rock in there. So we can go back in, okay, and the top sides, little parts of these rocks, I can add in a little bit of a highlight. In the darker areas, I don't have as much of a highlight on my rocks because it's in a darker area, okay? But these rocks towards the center are a little bit more illuminated already. And these rocks, when it goes into the darker area where I've added a lot more ink, I can kind of reintroduce the light top of the rock, okay? And I'll show you what this looks like closer up here. Right. Finish with that. See, like this, those rocks look a lot more three-dimensional now, you know, with that little bit of highlighting on top of it, okay? So there's more of this white on the interior, and then see as I move out here, it kind of tapers off. And there's like 4 dots right here, but you see where it moves into the darker area? There's just one little dot right there. Okay, now if you just go overboard and it's like, oh my gosh, I added way too many highlights. So you can just kind of wipe it right off. Wipe it right off. Excuse me. These videos, I talk so much in these videos from what I was used to when designing these stamps. All right. Okay. I think that's it. I'm looking at it. I don't know. I'm trying to make an assessment. I mean, we can bring, you know, some lighter pink into this too. Let me just show you what that looks like instead of just saying it hypothetically. This is the same. No, this is a rose pink right here. Well, let's just use that rose pink. Okay, this one's a little bit of a darker pink. Darker and brighter, but you can go in with, this is a little bit of a warm pink. There's a little bit of a orange to this, okay? See that right there? Okay, now what you do is, I wouldn't just go right in here like that. It would be too abrupt, okay? So let's kind of wipe that off a little bit so we're adding kind of a lighter value of it. Now see, I'm just barely tapping it right there. And let's see this right here? So I'm getting a very light value of that pink in here. See that? It's just a little bit different. You know, instead of having this, I wouldn't call that stark white in there, but see if we can get a little bit of a light shade of it in there. You know, and maybe come over here a little bit more. Bring it into your blue a little bit, where it overlaps the blue. It reads a little bit more kind of violet, you know, mix of those two colors. Okay, so we have something like that. Do you see that right there? It's just a really pale pink in there. And that's a good way to do it. You know, you can always test out how much you want to apply because you're doing it from a very incremental application of it. So you ink up and then you blot off, okay? And that's a good way to do it because you have complete command over how much you apply. And then when you start applying it too, you just start doing it very lightly, and through repetition you build up a very small amount of it, and you can make your assessment. Do you like it? Do you want to add more? Do you want to stop at it? You know, maybe if you don't like it at all, it was barely any of a commitment to that color. It just kind of gives you a hint of what it will look like, okay? And remember, you know, when you're doing things like when you're overlapping one hue over the other, and it's optically kind of mixing to form a different yellow. It's not physically mixing with the you know, the ink underneath, but it's optically doing it because you're just putting like a transparent layer of another one. You know, you can get the gist of what that color is going to look like. You know what this color is going to look like just on a white piece of paper, okay? But what does that look like over, you know, different shades and values of the blues in this case that we've already applied? So just do it very lightly at first, and you'll have, again, complete command over it. All right, so that is it. This is just a really quick one. I mean, I didn't have time to do a lot of things in terms of technique on this tonight. I don't know what time it is right now. It's like 1 here. But I wanted to get something down. So something like a Milky Way. You know, it really fills in the space, especially when you can do it top and bottom. Let me do one additional thing here. Let's take a cotton ball and some white pigment ink. I'm just using my Hero Arts one. Not Hero Arts. Yeah, Hero Arts. Hero Hues Unicorn, okay? Just a white pigment ink. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in a little element of softness, okay? It's like mist on the water or something like that. Just for a little bit of an extra. I love texture, and that texture right there is now very soft. You see that texturing in there? Where I've added. So see, I've started in the dark, lighter area, and I've worked it into the darker. But see, I'm not going all the way over here because this is too dark. Too dark over there. All right, so I'll do the same thing over here. I'll just start on the lighter area, and I'll just kind of creep this into the darker one, okay? So this is dry. It's like dry brushing, okay? It's, I don't know what you would call it in this case. I'm dry cotton balling, dry applying, okay? This into the lake. So now it looks like mist kind of rising up from the lake. And it gives me that little feeling of, I don't know, softness. It's a textural change that's happening in here. See that? Now see this little boating fisherman right here? Let's reiterate what's going on in the lake surface over here. And let's reiterate it right here. See? Right here. I'll just go with this. I'm not going to just do it all over the entire thing, boat. But you just kind of bring it in. See, I'm barely applying any of it. It's taking It might take 20 taps, but my biggest thing is, if you start with a very dry, light approach to anything like that, the pink, we started off with light tones, blending it in here. That is complete command of it. It's like the opposite of something like calligraphy, where you're writing something and that is what you have, This doesn't take like a lot of time learning something like that. It's because it's coming into focus or application just, very incrementally, where you have complete command of it. So here's this impression down here. But look at how that looks now. It's just, I think it looks different in terms of feel because there's this little illumination right here. See, I didn't even put it in here or here. I mean, I could have had this mist over here, but just leave the back, a little bit sharp. So you have this oscillation going from darker to lighter, but it's also crisp to soft like that. So it's a textural and value change in there. And see how it's reiterated back here. I mean, if you want to, you can put some of this type of touch on the, some of the pine boughs next to the illuminated sky if you want to, just for textural and value changes up here. I barely put anything on there. It was just whatever's retained on there. But see a little bit right there. This one and this one, so that when you look at it from here, I mean, those bows are a little bit lighter next to our light source, okay? All right, so anyways, another quick scene finishing. I don't know, this would probably take me 15 minutes. I'm at the 26-minute mark on this video here right now, but it would be very quick if I would just went through it, And, one of the things that added maybe a minute or two was, doing a little bit of the blending on here. But like I said, you can just do it in one color. Boom, stamp it out. And then you can do the toning in just with pink and blend that in that way, and that looks terrific too. Okay? All right, so anyways, if you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. Thanks as always for tuning into the Stampscapes channel. And we will see you on the next video.